Roman Catholic principles will be taken under the care and protection of the state.
This or you lose your job. Do this or you'll be canceled. Do this or I'm going to punish you. That's not how God works. He doesn't intimidate us into obedience.
Hello there, friends. Welcome once again to the YouTube channel. You're here with Pastor James Devalon. In today's video, what I have for you here is Pastor Scott Ritsema from the channel The Belt of Truth. Scott Ritsema, make sure you go and subscribe to this man's YouTube channel. Show some support as well. I'm also going to put a link in the title of this video as well in the description of this video so that you can go support the man's ministry.
They're calling, by the way, this isn't like the National Sunday Law Enforcement of the Final Mark of the Beast. This would be a foot in the door.
In today's video, he is speaking about Project 2025. He's breaking down the words that are found in the pages that deals primarily with the Sunday supposed Sabbath that is made mention here. I think Scott Ritsema did an excellent job breaking this down, and I wanted to bring this to you and share this matter with you as well. I want you to hear this message, think about the words that are being said here, and at the same time to read the prophecies to see what the Bible tells us and what we are told in the spirit of prophecy as we draw near to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Link in the description below. Once again, like and subscribe to the page. Click the bell icon for more. I want to say thank you. We hit 50,000 subscribers this morning, and this is a huge accomplishment, and I'm forever grateful for all the supports and the love and the prayers and so many of you who's contributed to the channel and added your thought and perspective and comments and checked and balances. I am forever grateful for that. So Advent Media Connect is growing big and strong by the grace of God, and we plan on keeping that fire burning as long as there's breath in our body. Anyway, friends, having said that, check out Scott Ritsema at this moment. Enjoy this video. At the end, I want to share a final thought. Take a listen.
Now, I did not read all 920 pages, but somebody tipped me off to the fact that on page 589, there's something very interesting stated. And it's called Project 2025 because they want to see their party elected in 2024, in which case he would take office in 2025. So when the new president is in place in 2025, what will be the policies that we are hoping that he will implement? Most of which, of course, again, are not objectionable and something worth bringing into a prophecy discussion. I should mention this also. There has been some misinformation stated about Project 2025 and what its aims and objectives are. And so before I go into the critique of some of their policies, I should mention that from a political science standpoint, you understand, I think, you don't need a government teacher to tell you, how many branches of government are there? There are 3 branches of government, and so when we have an administrative element of the federal government, the bureaucracy it's been called, you understand that that is under one of the 3 branches of government. Do you know which one? Executive, legislative, or judicial? It is under the executive branch. So the idea of these guys is basically the executive branch has a lot to say on policy by directing the administrative branch of government, that is the executive branch, by directing the bureaucracy to do according to our values and according to our policies that we are trying to get in place. And that's not a surprise, that's not a shock, that's not some crazy thing that's happening. That's what some of the misinformation was out there, quite frankly, was that, oh, these conservatives are going to shut down one of the branches of government. That was stated. Not correct. It's simply repopulating the bureaucracy with people of like mind who will apply the policies we believe in, instead of having the permanent government, the deep state aspect of this monolithic, inertia, this entity, this institution that has its own policy objectives, contrary to what voters and representatives might have to say. So with that out of the way, I believe there has been some excessive hype over Project 2025 and its potential risks to liberty and freedom. So that's the disclaimer, but there are some concerns here. I wouldn't expect to see a section in a policy document called Sabbath rest, but it's in there. And what it states is, God ordained the Sabbath as a day of rest. Now let's pause right there. True or false? Everybody said true. I agree with you if by the Sabbath we mean the seventh day of the week, right? So you know that God ordained the seventh day of the week. As you read on here, they don't mean the seventh day of the week. So true or false, what they mean, God ordained the Sabbath as a day of rest, false. But we'll go on and you'll see that in a moment. And until very recently, the Judeo-Christian tradition sought to honor that mandate by moral and legal regulation of work on that day. Now that's key language right there. They are advocating, they are celebrating, they are yearning for the time that has passed here until very recently when there was legal regulation of work on the Sabbath. So right out of the gates, it's framed in terms that are not liberty-oriented, but in terms of, reading on, moreover, a shared day off makes it possible for families and communities to enjoy time off together rather than as atomized individuals, and provides a healthier cadence of life for everyone. Has anybody read the comments by Pope John Paul II about his, I was going to say Laudato Si. What was his one on the Day of the Lord from 25 years ago? Help me with the Latin here. Laudato Si is about the environment with the current Pope. That's it. He's got the language there. You know, if you can speak 3 languages, you're trilingual. If you can speak 2 languages, you're bilingual. If you can speak 1 language, you're an American. So that's me. Sorry, the Latin. It sounds like Pope John Paul II here. And reading on in the statement, we read, and by the way, isn't that true that we are atomized? And so a lot of the diagnoses of the problem, we would have 100% common ground. But the prescription, the solution we're going to struggle with here, it goes on and says, unfortunately, that communal day of rest has eroded. And again, they mention good comments here that there's too much pressures of consumerism. We don't like all the secularism enforced in our society and upon our children, especially for low-income workers. This is a problem. But go back to that phrase. Unfortunately, that communal day of rest. The beginning of the paragraph, until very recently, there was legal regulation of work on what they call later in the paragraph the communal day of rest. Now, when I taught history, some of you lived this. It wasn't history, but it was the Cold War. And there were terms that were used during the Cold War, individualism versus collectivism. Is that familiar terminology to some of you? Even to the younger who are learning it in their textbooks. Good, very good. So I teach that in my homeschool. There you go. Ding, ding, ding. Individualism is the American model for how self-government occurs in a society. And that doesn't mean it's a free-for-all and you can just pillage and steal and rape and murder, but you do have, as Romans 13 teaches, the biblical model of God ordaining the magistrate for bearing the sword, and the purposes of him bearing the sword are to minister vengeance or punish the wrongdoer. Now, what kind of wrongs are we punishing through the civil government? Let's go to Roger Williams. Are you familiar with him? Have you read chapter 16 of The Great Controversy? It is such a good chapter because it's such a beautiful balance. We are so polarized in this world today that on one far end you have the French Revolution, you have enforced secularism, you have the denial of any creator God and inalienable human rights. And on the other pole, you have enforced religion, you have dominion theology. You have the papal model of the Dark Ages. The American way, I'm going to give a talk tomorrow morning in Alabama called the Tightrope of Liberty. They want some religious liberty stuff at this meeting in Alabama. We're doing a Protestant Reformation themed weekend. It's going on right now. I double booked actually, so I'm here with you guys today. And I told them, can you put all mine on Sunday? It's the first time I've done it to you guys. You get the honor, but Lord forgive me for that. But I'm going to be there Sunday morning on the Tightrope of Liberty, how the chapter 16 of The Great Controversy describes the Declaration of Independence. It says it's a grand old document. Have you ever read that phrase in Declaration in The Great Controversy in chapter 16? It says the grand old document articulated that we are all created equal. And so every individual has religious freedom, has freedom of all varieties. And also it points out that in the Declaration of Independence, it says governments are instituted to, do you know what the rest of the phrase is in the Declaration of Independence? Governments are instituted among men to secure these rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Constitution calls it life, liberty, and property. So why are governments instituted? Romans 13, to punish the wrongdoer. Declaration of Independence, quoted affirmatively in the Great Controversy, it is to protect, secure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I'm hearing, let's go to Roger Williams, I said, right? Life and liberty and property. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. You have the latter half of the Ten Commandments. Some of you who are in Livingston, we just hit this last night. I didn't even realize that. I was going to be part of this one too. The latter 6, the second table of the Ten Commandments, deal with how we relate with one another, right? It's the love your neighbor as yourself, but also it's the proper role of the civil government to punish the wrongdoer for stealing, for lying under oath or in contract. So you've got contract enforcement. You've got thou shalt not commit adultery. We have marriage laws. We have ways to make sure that is part of a moral and just society. You have don't murder, don't kill, and don't steal, of course. So these commandments are part of the framework of a proper civil government. Governments were instituted to secure these rights. You have a right to not be stolen from, to not be killed, etc. How are the first 4 commandments different from the last 6? The first 4 regulate our worship of God, right? Yeah, vertical and horizontal. Good way to put it. Horizontally, my relationship with my fellow man needs to be regulated when crime against mankind takes place. My relationship with God is between me and God. How does God put that? Choose ye this day. Choose yourselves. Choose for yourself whom you will worship. Now, if the God of heaven puts it that way, who is man to interpose between the individual's conscience and worship choice and their God? There is no place, Roger Williams said, and he founded Rhode Island, and the founding fathers adopted his model of governance, that the government should not regulate in matters of worship. Now, this was a radical idea. Back in the old world, in Europe, if there was a church and there was a state, they were together. The church was the state religion. So in England, Anglican Church, that's the state religion. In Germany, Lutheranism. In Geneva, Calvinism. And worst of all, in France and in Spain and in Italy, Romanism. But even the Protestants did not quite get this. The Anabaptists did in the 16th century. They said, we don't bear the sword. We don't wed ourselves with the civil government to try to enforce the dogmas of our faith, because that's not Christian. It's not. Jesus said, the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them, but not so with you. If you want to be great, be the servant of all. And that's what the Anabaptists did. We went to a great museum in Ohio. It's called Behold. Anybody ever been there? It's an Amish, Mennonite, Anabaptist history site, museum. And they have this beautiful painting, 360 degrees in this big old room. And they take you on a journey through Protestant history, kind of through the Anabaptist lenses, much of which we would definitely affirm. But that was their idea in the 16th century. When the Pilgrims came to the American shores, you had the separatist pilgrims. They were the ones under William Bradford and William Brewster. You know them as the ones that had the Thanksgiving with the Indians, right? And they were a little different than the Puritans who ended up establishing Massachusetts Bay Colony and persecuting Roger Williams and persecuting Anne Hutchinson and saying you will observe Puritan religion in Massachusetts under penalty of law. So they didn't object to the fact that the Anglican Church and the English state were wedded. They just thought the Anglican Church was a little too Catholic in its forms of worship, and they wanted a more pure biblical religion to be enforced in their colony. Roger Williams said, no, we don't enforce the first 4 commandments. The last 6 are under the purview of the state. So that's all the backdrop to this. Oh, wait, I forgot to mention how these pilgrims were different. Do you know there were 2 different groups of English colonists in New England? Most people don't make this distinction. The pilgrims who had the Thanksgiving with the Indians, they were not Puritans, they were separatists. And the difference is that they broke from the Anglican Church and were worshiping on their own, illegally, in their own separatist faith in England in the late 1500s and early 1600s. That wasn't working because they were getting persecuted. And yes, Puritans got persecuted too, but not like separatists. Because Puritans were saying, we just want to purify the Church of England. They didn't object to the Church of England. They didn't say we're breaking from it. Nobody broke from the state church in those days, except these crazy Anabaptists over on the mainland. But the separatists did. And under William Brewster, they were worshiping on their own. They flee to the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, they find freedom. Because in the Netherlands, that was an actual free country at the time, where you could be of various different denominational faiths, and there wasn't an imposition of one state religion. I am a little biased because I'm Dutch, but I like the Dutch golden age of the late 17th or 16th and early 17th centuries, because the Pilgrims found a haven there. But I love the Pilgrims, even though they didn't get along with the Dutch. They're like, man, the culture here is not good, and our children are learning bad things, and so we're gonna flee. They fled to America, and that's how the earth helped the woman in Revelation 12. You ever read that text? The earth helped the woman. The earth, not the waters. What do the waters represent in Revelation 17, verse 15? A lot of people. The earth is the less densely populated area that becomes a haven for the persecuted Christians of Europe. And the Pilgrim founders were the ones that started that out as the separatists. They end up getting subsumed in the Puritan colony. Plymouth colony, which they founded, had a higher degree of tolerance, and they were kind of like an embryonic Roger Williams a few decades before. I don't want to overstate that because we're big fans of the Pilgrims, but they were definitely not Puritans. They were separatists. So that's an important distinction there, that there are some groups that got this right, from the Anabaptists to a certain extent those early Pilgrims that were separatists, and also then the guy who nailed this to the wall, Roger Williams. By the way, don't go to Roger Williams National Monument in downtown Providence, because first of all, I don't ever need to go to downtown Providence again. I mean, unless the Lord calls me there to witness or something. That was not the most enjoyable thing, going to some of these crazy cities these days. But we as a family, we were doing a history tour last month. We went to New York, we went to William Miller Farm, we went to Hiram Edson Farm, we went to Gorham, Maine, we went to all these Adventist history sites, and we also went to Plymouth, where we got on the Mayflower, and it's not the Mayflower, but the replica of the Mayflower. And so we learned a lot about the Pilgrims there as a family, and went to, as one of our last things, Providence, Rhode Island. We're like, we're big fans of Roger Williams. Let's go to his historic site there. And we walk in to the visitor center of it, and the pictures on the walls is all total woke. Like, it had nothing to do with Roger Williams. It was all pushing LGBT and all this, and I'm like, wait a minute. I know Roger Williams. He's the founder of the First Baptist Church in America. This is not Roger Williams. And so I dialogued with the curators there to find some common ground and we didn't have a lot of time to talk with them. But anyway, big fan of him, even though they've kind of spoiled his legacy by turning it into this weird woke thing. But okay, back to this document now. Now you've got the backdrop on the first 4 commandments, the last 6 commandments, and why we would say legal regulation and a mandate. Well, now they're talking about a mandate from heaven. Is it a mandate from heaven that we keep the Sabbath? This is what do you mean by mandate? Right? What do you mean by mandate, Brother Ritsema? Is it a commandment? It is a commandment. But how does God command things? He says the greatest commandment of all is love. So when we offer our Sabbath observance to him, it's not because we've been coerced to do it. So yeah, it's a mandate of heaven. It's a commandment. But not in the sense of what we mean by mandates the last few years. Do this or you lose your job. Do this or you'll be canceled. Do this or I'm going to punish you. That's not how God works. He doesn't intimidate us into obedience. He woos us and invites us into obedience through his love and his sacrifice on the cross. So you might object to the word mandate, but it is a commandment. They're not saying mandate, but they are saying regulate. That's over there, regulation of work on that day. Legal regulation of work on that day. Getting back to a communal day of rest. Communal. So the whole society, the community, will recognize the same day of rest, and it will be legally regulated. Are you hearing some language here that is prophetically of concern to you? So you don't have to have a political ideology to read that objectively and go to God's word and say, yeah, I don't like where these guys are going with this one. So Congress, they say, should encourage communal rest by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act to require that workers be paid time and a half for hours worked on the Sabbath, which that day would default to Sunday. Now they do go on and give a little nod to employers who observe the seventh-day Sabbath from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. And you can appreciate that that's in there, but you also have to wonder, is that going to be a long-term thing? Because they keep saying communal day of rest, communal day of rest. And if you got everybody having their own day of rest, not communal anymore. So it's a little bit doublespeak going on here. But also with... Yeah, sincere. So you have to prove your sincere belief, like the whole vaccination... Yeah, exactly. Well, where's Jonathan? Boy, where's my religious... You got a religious liberty attorney in the group today. He left, didn't he? Yeah, that's all right. Jonathan Cherney. You ought to have him sometime do a religious liberty talk. Yeah, you would have to then demonstrate your sincere belief in that day. But when you read this phrase is kind of a throwaway, really. Because what is the policy that they're calling for? They're calling, by the way, this isn't like the National Sunday Law enforcement of the final mark of the beast. This would be a foot in the door, right? This is, what is the policy? It's employers, if you are open on Sunday, you have to pay your employees time and a half. So it's a little bit of a fine, a little bit of inducement to close on Sunday. Now they'd give the nod to the employer who is a seventh-day Sabbath-keeping employer. But isn't that a moot point? Do you know any seventh-day Sabbath-keeping employers who are open on the seventh day? No. So that's just kind of in there maybe to make it sound a little more libertarian, a little more tolerant, a little more forgiving of those who don't do our communal day of rest. Because not very many seventh-day Sabbath-keeping employers are even open on the seventh day, so this provision wouldn't apply to them. It does allow them to not have to pay time and a half on Sunday, though. So it takes the heat off of them. But how many secular employers, how many people of various religions who aren't interested in this conversation are then also induced, fined, penalized for being open on Sunday, even though that has nothing to do with their religious faith and expression? Well, we're trying to get a communal day of rest, a communal worship thing happening again in this country. So that was Project 2025's page that got some Seventh-day Adventists' attention, and I hope the commentary has been balanced and accurate and straight from the document. No, I don't want to be in politics. That's not something I want to touch. But yes, brother. Oh yeah, interestingly, we've been talking about Sunday enforcement mostly in recent years on the climate change issue, at least I have. We've had our eye on that ball because of Laudato Si, the encyclical by the current Pope that promoted all of this climate change ideology. And as a part of that, he says, the observance of Sunday, the quote is, gives us greater compassion for the poor and a greater appreciation of nature. And then after the COVID lockdowns, it was really interesting. The UK Guardian had a headline, "Now for climate lockdowns." And then there was a International Energy Agency shortly thereafter that had a infographic and all the ideas they wanted to promote about how to reduce carbon emissions. And one of them was car-free Sundays. And then you get Yuval Noah Harari. He's one of the World Economic Forum spokesmen and mouthpieces on philosophy and history and technocracy and transhumanism. But one thing he said is, one thing we've learned from COVID is how, he said, it's not a very deadly virus, but we learned you can lock down entire countries. You can shut down all flights. You can do all these things, and this might give us good reason on what we can do also about climate change. So it's fueling that idea of climate lockdowns, which could be periodic on a 7-day cycle like the International Energy Agency said. All of that is covered in technocracy, so I won't comment further on it, but the climate change ideology is definitely one to keep our eye on. So when I share this, it's just to be looking at all fronts, okay? So 100% on the COVID stuff, I'm your guy. So don't worry about, is there going to be an imbalance here? I'll be an equal opportunity offender all day long. Because if you're a student of Bible prophecy, what are you? You're objective to God's word. And we don't equally or unequally yoke with any political ideologies of this world.
All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed that. This was powerful. I love the way he broke this down and give a balanced perspective on this. I just want to add a few more thoughts as we bring this video to an end. Let's take a look at the first history of the Sunday law, what motivated for Constantine to bring up this about, to see what kind of parallels we can see, similarities, so that we can make a case here. We are told some of the reasons why Constantine felt the need to bring about a national Sunday law: the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was in decline as well, and this is also with the incoming division that was about to happen with the barbarous hordes. And we are also told influence of sun worship in history played a significant role in bringing about a Sunday law. So I want you to keep these in mind, because typologically speaking, these things are happening again. So there was the Battle of Malvian Bridge when Constantine got his greatest victory, and which gave credence to the idea that the Christian God certainly has to be the true God. That played a significant role in that as well. And the second key event is that we have the Edict of Milan. Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, granting tolerance to all religion, including Christianity, within the Roman Empire, because prior to that, the Christian faith was being persecuted by the pagans. So when Constantine did this, he somewhat united the nation temporarily, which was eventually going to bring about further persecution. We are told the Council of Nicaea in 325. This brought about Constantine's Sunday law edict in 321 AD. So the way it went about is this: let all judges of town people and occupation of all trade rest on the variable of day of the sun. Now, I want you to notice how much of a parallel that is. He went through the economy, through the labor union to bring about this first Sunday law, because once you attacked it from that perspective, you laid this foundation, it just went all over the world. And then it became a thing all throughout the other places we saw. There were some serious key figures, influencers as well. Constantine didn't just put this in place all by himself. There was Eusebius of Caesarea, and also Lactantius, and also Caesentus of Nicomedia. So some of these men, influential indeed, churchmen, some of them historians, and some of them began to play with the mind of the emperor, which led about to this first Sunday law. History tells us all judges and people and craftsmen shall rest on the venerable day of the sun. So if you notice, the element of trade, labor, employment is connected to the first Sunday law, as we see parallelly speaking with Project 2025 and that part that deals with the same aspect of a Sunday law. But countrymen may, without hindrance, attend to agriculture, since it often happens that this is the most suitable day for sowing grains or planting vines. So there was still a clause in the law for certain groups of people. But we know eventually there was no acceptance, no tolerance eventually. There was also an anti-Sabbath law, which came also about, where everybody who were Judaizing, they were also to be condemned or referred to as anathemas. We are told that temporarily in the history of Christianity, Constantine did indeed retain the pagan priest tie of Pontifex Maximus. And what he is arguing is that it's highly possible that Constantine was never really converted. It was all a facade. Also, we are told perhaps the most significant event of this policy is to be found in a decree of 321 regulating Sunday observance. That ordinance put the Lord's Day on the same level as the observance of the pagan festivals and marks it by the cessation of work. It is noteworthy, however, that the day is described by no Christian's appellation, but simply as dies venerabilis solis. No pagan school will object to that. So it appeals to the pagans. It appeals to the nature worshippers, as well as the Christians who were willing to compromise. But keep in mind, not all Christians went along with this. There were those that were from the East who stayed true to the biblical Sabbath, but the Western Christians went along with the pagan movement and compromised. This brought about money in the church. This brought about many membership in the church. And also the elements and the relics of the pagans walked into the church also, and it was accepted and adopted under this notion of pagan worship or evangelism, as they might term that today. But in the same process, the law of God has been maligned and cast away. We are told the Review and Herald, December 15, speaks about Roman Catholic principles will be taken under the care and protection of the state. This national apostasy will speedily be followed by national ruin. And you don't want to miss the nature and the power of these words. Roman Catholic principles will be taken under the care and protection of the state. So, yes, it may not be Catholics who pushes this thing forward. We are told in Revelation 13, it is the second beast that is going to give life to the image of the beast. And we are told that the image of the beast is the union of church and state. Historically, this is the case, and it's about to happen again. We are told when the early church became corrupted by departing from the simplicity of the gospel and accepted heathen rites and custom, she lost the spirit and the power of God. In order to control the consciences of the people, she sought the support of the secular power. The result was the papacy, a church that controlled the power of the state and employed it to further her own ends, especially for the punishment of heresy. In order for the United States to form an image of the beast, the religious power must so control the civil government that the authority of the state will also be employed by the church to accomplish her own end. Friends, Jesus is coming again.